The CT scanning company searching through packs and boxes of cards has finally come out with a solution that I think is a good thing for the hobby if it is in fact true. So I want to share my thoughts on that. We'll then also touch on the Style Jordan situation once again, because quite a number of these have shown up on Goldin's September Elite auction that I think might catch some people off guard with how rare the thing actually is. And I also want to talk about what this maybe means for Beckett and the ones graded within their slab. So a lot to unpack today. This is obviously another weekly news video. It's been quite some time since I've done one of these, but I thought, you know what, let's bring it back because there's a couple of topics here that I think are super important. Now, like I said, the first thing we're going to talk about is this CT scanning situation. And if you are a regular on the channel, you're probably sick of it by now because I've covered it at least 6 or 7 times in the last couple of months. And for those of you that are not sure what it is, I encourage you to check out my other videos. But like I mentioned in that intro, you essentially have a company offering it as a service, offering people the ability to send in boxes of cards, sealed boxes, sealed packets of sports cards and trading cards, and they'll scan it with a CT scanning machine in order to find the hits. And it is something that works quite effectively. We've touched on it a lot, how well it actually works. It works with things like flawless cases, sealed cases. They can find the hits, they can find the logo men. It's a big bloody problem, obviously, because 9 times out of 10 or 99 times out of 100, the person using this is probably doing it to scam, right? Because ultimately, you can argue that, okay, if we're scanning something like the Logan Paul situation when it happened with that Pokemon case and it ended up having G.I. Joe packs in there, maybe you can prevent situations like that. Maybe something like BBCE could be using this for that purpose. But ultimately, that information is quite a touchy one, right? If you're scanning something and you're finding a hit, that's very sensitive information. And if you're just an average Joe looking to scam, you can send your box in, get it scanned, find there's no hit in there, and then sell it to somebody unsuspecting for full price, knowing full well they're not going to hit anything. And that's why it's a big problem of mine and why I'm sort of a bit excited with today's update, because the company, Industrial Inspection, if I remember correctly, is their name, has come out and mentioned that they're working on an alternative service offering. Now, as I mentioned in the first video when we talked about these guys, I had a big issue with what they were doing. They sort of didn't know much about cards. They said so themselves. They saw there was money to be made. They wanted to be first to market and started offering it as a service, charging like $75 a pack, etc. They then had an interview and sort of came out and said, well, we want to make sure there's ethics going on here. We don't want to do the bad thing, but we're going to figure out a robust process down the line, how to stop people from scamming, etc. Now, my thought process at the time was that's a bit dumb, right? If you want to do the right thing, don't offer it as a scanning service in the first place. Stop thinking that you want to be first to market and sort of do the right thing, maintain the ethics. Now, it looks like they've sort of come full circle because that's essentially what they're talking to here. You can sort of see here that this is highlighted from Boston Card Hunter, who is from Sports Card Madness, says that this update has now come from the company. They go on to say, we also have received requests for consultation from a variety of manufacturers and packaging firms. And to sort of satisfy this alternative demand, we have developed and filed a provisional patent application regarding a new and extremely effective technology designed to mitigate the feasibility of CT scanning collectibles. So essentially what this means is they think they've come up with some technology that's going to stop people from scanning packs, which means they could probably sell that service to the likes of Fanatics and Panini, which means that when packs and stuff get printed, nobody can go ahead and scan this sort of thing, which is a huge thing, right? And that's sort of what these guys with their experience should have been doing from the first place, right? Leverage their expertise to try and strengthen the hobby rather than, you know, facilitate scams, which is essentially what was happening under their old service. Now, many of you guys in the comments were sort of defending them and saying, well, they're well within their right because it's capitalism and all that sort of stuff. But from my perspective, you know, anytime you're sort of aiding and abetting people to scam is a terrible look. And I don't understand how people can be comfortable with that. So we can sort of see what comes with this. You can sort of see here, some people in the comments are sort of saying they don't believe it because they work with the technology. There's similar discussion points happening online on Blowout, etc., where they don't really believe this is possible. But let's take their word from it. Let's see what happens. And if it does happen, I think this is a really good thing. And whilst it doesn't protect the hobby when it comes to wax already printed to date, i.e. all the sealed wax already out there, this is going to help things moving forward. And again, I'll quickly say, some people will say this is not that big of a deal, but I want to remind you guys, we covered this 2 months ago. You know, this stuff has been coming out of China for a long time. Those were the long-standing rumors, like you can sort of see over here. And they have proof too that this was happening, you know, in that part of the world. So I think this is a lot bigger than what people think. This is a bigger problem than what people think. I think what sort of happened in the last month is that, you know, the Western markets, i.e. mainly America, has caught on to the fact that this was possible. So now it's a bit more mainstream, which is obviously going to make the problem bigger. But you guys get where I'm going. This is going to fix things, I hope. So let's sort of see what happens next. Now, The next thing I want to quickly touch on is the Star Jordan situation. You guys, again, would have seen I've covered this twice in my last two videos. And, you know, one of the things I talked about recently was the history of the card and why so many people talking about it have sort of ignored that element. And they're trying to sort of create this artificial market to pump these cards. And I was talking about in my last video how I think there's a lot of institutional money coming after these things, which is pushing the price up. And whilst I think this card should be an expensive card, whilst I think this card is more than likely his true rookie card, you know, what we're sort of seeing from people pushing this money is just a little bit crazy to me. I think what people sort of saw in my last video was me hating on the card. I'm not hating on the card. I'm just trying to educate on the history. This thing was heavily faked in the past. It was hard to determine print runs. The print quality is incredibly poor. You need to keep this in mind when sort of stuff is popping up as record sales, etc. And the reason why I'm referencing Cagelawyer over here is because he made a post today, and this is how I first became aware of it, that there are 10 Star Jordans currently in Goldin's September Elite auction. And this is them exactly here. One is within the team bag, and then you can sort of see the rest over here, selling for, you know, quite large amounts of money. There are 2 PSA copies, one in a 5, one in a 5.5. I think Dustin's going to watch this one pretty closely because he owns a 5.5 himself, and then a PSA 7 with a 9 auto on there. Quite, you know, an interesting one, right? And when we're talking about pumps and dumps, you've got record sales, and then all of a sudden, 10 copies happen to show up in one auction. There are other stars within there too that are not the 101. But this goes to what I'm saying, right? Don't buy what you're reading. Don't just fall into the FOMO trap of seeing all these guys talk about it, because number one, a lot of them are uneducated on the history of this card, which means they can't really comment too much on it. And then number two, they've got vested interest because they own copies of the card. And then number three, you don't know how many are actually out there. So just keep that in mind, please, guys. That's the point I want to make. Buy what you want, collect what you want. If you think this is the rookie, go for it. If you think the 86 Fleer is a rookie, go for it. But just don't buy into this FOMO crap, because you got 10 in one auction. Guys, come on. Do you think something's going on here? Because I sure as shit do when it comes to a pumping perspective. This is just wild how it's all of a sudden, you know, snowballing into what we're sort of seeing right in front of us. And it's just an interesting one, like I said. Now, you would have seen that I just referenced Cage, and I want to go back to his stories, actually, because there was something pretty funny that sort of happened here relating to a back and forth with him and Dustin, the sports card dad, that I wanted to reference because Dustin obviously just got referenced in one of my recent videos that I thought was pretty funny. You sort of had a comment here in the post where, you know, Cage was talking about the fact there's 10 on the Goldin page. Dustin leaves a comment saying, did I hear correctly that Cagelawyer sold his 101 BGS 8.5 copy 2 months before PSA started grading stars again? Just asking questions. Cagelawyer responded, this is pretty funny. Yep, you heard correctly. I bought my BGS 8.5 for 8K and sold it a year and a half later for 36K. Any other questions, clown? That is the difference between you and me. You have questions, I have answers. Who's next? Now, there's a bit more back and forth, but it looks like the comment was deleted. I'm not sure who deleted it, whether it was Dustin or Cage himself, but I thought that was pretty funny having, you know, two creators just go back and forth, a bit of banter in the comments there. You can clearly see the Star Jordan is getting people pretty fired up. Dustin was unhappy with what I sort of said in my last video, well, not my last video, my second last video, where I sort of referenced his ignorance to the history of this card, right? He talked about the fact that collectors had previously slept on this, and as I sort of mentioned in this video over here, that's obviously not correct. Beckett price guides for almost every release, I think I only referenced the first few, had actually valued the star over the 86 Fleer. And the reason why we saw a dip, I'm not going to repeat myself because most of you guys would have seen this video, the reason why we saw a changing of the guard per se, with people sort of moving away from the star, was because of all the issues with the print quality and the fakes, etc. I'm not going to repeat it, like I said, so do check it out if you want a bit more information. But this whole star situation is getting people fired up. You've got Jeff in my last video. If you haven't seen this, I encourage you to see it, because it's a stark reminder of what people at the forefront of this hobby sort of are portraying and what they don't actually know, and why they sort of are idiots for a lot of the part. And I don't like throwing the term around idiot very often, but I think Jeff was in this particular instance, because he came out and sort of flexed a profit on a card he didn't own. It was somebody else's profit. It was an unrealized gain that he was flexing. And then it turns out that the card he was sort of referencing having made a profit on, an unrealized profit on, he actually sold months earlier. So the whole situation is a mess. It's a bit long. I probably could have made it more concise, but I think it's a good insight into maybe the perception that Jeff is trying to push within this industry, and another clear-cut example of why people probably don't like him and why people are sort of sick of him, because this approach is, once again, just incredibly idiotic on his part, lacks complete transparency, and is creating, you know, all these accusations around pumps and dumps and all that kind of thing. So if you haven't seen it, please do check it out. If you sort of haven't seen this one either, please do check it out, because I do talk through the history of the star card. I got absolutely grilled by Ustar84 Jordan Vultures out there. You guys are like mad dogs defending this thing. You guys completely missed the point. I'm not saying the card's not the rookie card. I'm just saying, guys, this thing was valued correctly in the past. Don't believe people that are saying it's rare or people ignored it, right? Don't buy into that crap. People always valued this card correctly. It's not anything new. This love for this card has always been around. So you've got collectors out there saying it was slept on. They're a bit dumb. So again, that's sort of it for today. This one is very quick. Only a couple of topics. I can't recall if I, forgot to talk about anything, but it is what it is. I'll see you guys in a couple of days. I might do a live stream the same day this video is releasing. I'm keen to bust open some boxes. I've got 5 boxes here. I only held up 4. Here's the 5th one of the Falcon and the Winter Soldier. So hobby boxes, Upper Deck. It's not the best TV series when it comes to Marvel stuff, but I'm a big fan of Marvel. I didn't mind this series, to be perfectly honest with you. I think it touched on some pretty good points. It got very woke with some things, but the commentary around, veterans and sort of being discarded and all that kind of thing, I thought was also pretty good. So can you hear what you guys think about that? But I picked up 5 of these hobby boxes because they go for dirt cheap. I think I got them for $300 Australian plus $10 postage, which works out to be about, $60 a box. I think that's like $40 USD a box. So got a chance to get an auto in these, but for that price to rip wax, that's like old school stuff. So again, even if you're not a big fan of it, I think you should try and pick some stuff up because that is a fun way to rip, in my opinion, in the modern hobby where boxes are costing hundreds, if not thousands of dollars. So anyway, I'm rambling. Stay tuned for that live stream if it does go ahead. I'm not feeling the best, so just bear with me if it doesn't happen. And that's sort of it. So, as always, share your thoughts down below, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Cheers.